Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. My name is Jamie Kidder. I'm the National Outreach Director for College Living Experience, and we are so excited to have you with us. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with College Living Experience, we support neurodiverse young adults as they learn to live independently, whether they're pursuing a college education, they're entering the workforce, or they're doing both. Our program provides structured day-to-day coaching across four primary pillars: academic, career, social, and independent living. And through that integrated and collaborative support, students build the skills and confidence they need for sustainable independence. So now part of our mission is to share knowledge and strategies that really empower families as they help their children navigate the road to independence. And we host a variety of webinars throughout the year on topics that are relevant to families of children with varying levels of need. Each event is really designed to provide insight, resources, and real-world perspectives to help you navigate your child's transition into independent adulthood. And we'd love for you to stay connected with CLE and be in the know about future events, both online events and the exciting things happening at any of our 8 CLE locations around the country. We'd love for you to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram for all the updates and upcoming events and additional resources. So having said all of that, before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. Because we have such a large group, we have 104 families registered to attend this presentation. Your cameras and microphones have been disabled, so our presenter has the spotlight, and in this case, it's the screen. Also, because we have such a large audience, we may have time for just a few questions at the end, and we will get to those as we can, but don't let that deter you from asking. Go ahead and drop your questions in the chat, and what we'll do is I will capture those. If we don't get to all of them, I will capture them. And we'll give Michael the opportunity to answer those in a document, and then we will attach that document to the follow-up email that we send out. So please ask your questions, even if we don't get to them at the end of the conversation this evening. And we're recording this event, so I will share the link with everyone who's registered in just a few days. So please feel free to pass that along to other families or other professionals who may benefit from this conversation. So with all of that, I am really excited to welcome Michael Ota with Kennesaw State University. Michael is also the founder of Raising the Ground Therapy and is an assistant professor at Kennesaw State. Michael brings over 20 years of experience across K through 12 and higher education, teaching his graduate courses in educational leadership through the clinical lens as a Board Certified Behavior Analyst. His work is right at the intersection of education, autism services, and community inclusion, which makes him uniquely positioned to speak about the very real cliff of services that families experience as their student transitions out of high school and into college. Through his research, his advocacy, and his clinical work, Michael focuses on helping neurodiverse young adults move from mandated school supports into meaningful, sustainable independence. And we are so excited to have him here to help us navigate this journey and your journey this evening. So without further fanfare, Michael, the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate the invite, and I appreciate everyone who's online to listen to this lecture, if you will. To give a little bit more background, I have 20 plus years of classroom experience, starting with middle school all the way to college, university. I had lived in Texas for 40 years of my life. My parents brought me there, and I recently moved to Georgia because there was an opportunity to be a professor at Kennesaw State University. So I'm very grateful to the institution for having me, but also in a lot of the support monetarily and academically or scholarly for the research I'm about to share with you. And I'm glad I've been asked to do this because not just in our practice, which my wife, Amy Oda, is a partner with me, working with neurodivergent individuals ranging from dyslexia, anxiety, autism, ADHD, anyone who just has a different perspective on how the world works. We've become the translator between the outside world and the individual. So uh, I'm really excited to be sharing with you some of our insights that we've gained over the years, but also sharing with you some of my current research, which is leading to helping solve the cliff. There are parts of this that I'm going to read from a script. So if I start to sound unnatural, that's because I'm reading it. I want to read it because I want to make sure certain points are made. The other thing that I was going to tell you, and if there's time, I might share a little bit at the end, but I'm also neurodivergent. I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism as a young child, reaffirmed at just a couple of years ago. So I know this not just for all of you and all the research that I've done, but I also know it for myself. Okay, so right, right there is my son Carter. That's about when he was 9 or 10. He was really into whatever Japanese series that was, manga maybe. I don't know. Um, but we've had a long journey with Carter. He was diagnosed with ADHD when he was 2, and then autistic when he was 5. When he was in kindergarten, he was so disruptive to the class that the teacher had written him up 5 times and served 3 days of ISS, in-school suspension, as a kindergartner. From there, we struggled with the school system to be able to get him the services because at that time, especially for quote unquote high functioning individuals, level 1, level 2 in autism, uh, the school system just, and this is not just locally for us, it's across the country, the school systems were just not recognizing that as an educational need. It wasn't until 8th grade that Carter was uh, made eligible for special education. And then from there, uh, we continue to have challenges that I'm going to share with you as we go along. But I wanted you to know that Carter an exemplar of how someone goes through the K-12 system, how the skills that they have, uh, he has a lot of skills. The problem is he doesn't know when or how or if he's supposed to implement those skills. And as he'll probably tell you, if you ask him what skills does he have, he'll tell you he's a great filmmaker. He's a good story teller, and those are all true. But the skills that he also has is knowing how to take care of himself, knowing how to cook, knowing how to write down a to-do list. Sometimes he executes that, and sometimes he needs prompts. But as he developed, and my wife and I purposely scaled back our involvement and let him sort of, uh, walk through the world with less training wheels and less of a net. He started to not just gain those skills, those adult skills, but also in really utilizing them. And again, I'll share throughout the presentation. Understanding that services cliff is very important. I had a parent uh, when I was working in the high school as a behavioral interventionist, and they were asking about what the transition would look like into college, and were shocked that special education didn't continue into college. A lot of parents don't know that. I'll be honest, I didn't know that until I got certified in special education. I just thought once you have a need, it follows you until you don't need that need anymore. Well, if you're not aware of this, special education ends when your child graduates or they no longer need services up to age 21. Sometimes the law allows 22, uh, but it cuts it off at the academic year. Those services can continue, but they're not congruent with going to college. They're not congruent for having a career. So those 18 plus services may not be the best fit. And beyond that, at college or in the workplace, you have the Americans with Disabilities Act, the 504 section, which says that reasonable accommodations must be provided. Well, that's pretty vague. What and who determines what is reasonable? Who and what determines how much money can be spent on these accommodations? And are there other supports? Because we're only talking about accommodations. Accommodations like extra test time or a note scribe. There's very few accommodations that people get. I get PDF copies of books and articles. I get that as an employee of Kennesaw State. I truly appreciate it. But what we have learned is that individuals who are in level 1, level 2 of neurodiversity continue to need assistance while they're in college. So as students exit K-12, they face what we call the services cliff. The predictable supports embedded in the IEP disappear overnight, literally. Once they graduate, those protections and those services are gone, while demands instantly increase. So for example, if you're going to register your child for college, you're not the one who gets to register them. They do. They go to the advisor. They listen to the instructions that are given. They are expected. I remember going with a client one time to a advisor's meeting. The client gave permission for me to be in the meeting, and anytime I asked a question, the advisor rightfully looked at the client and gave the answer. She would not recognize me in conversation. She would only recognize the client, the student. That's what you're facing. You are going to feel cut off. You're going to feel like you've lost control. But it's okay because there are things that you can do to help that transition. And our system, our administrators, and our policymakers can do things to make sure that that transition isn't a cliff and that there's a soft landing. Adult services are fragmented and require high-level executive functioning, precisely the skills many neurodivergent young adults are still developing. This mismatch creates vulnerability, disrupted academics, employment challenges, and difficulty navigating daily life. Carter is enjoying taking classes in film at our local community college. He did not know that around October, there's supposed to be a registration for the next semester. My wife, they're still in Texas, I'm not there right now. She reminded him a couple of times and he said, yeah, I'll take care of it. But he never checked his email. He never got the notice that he was supposed to register. And by the time classes ended in the first semester, he was not unable to register for the classes that he wanted. And so he's not going to college this semester. That's executive functioning. He struggles with executive functioning every day, just as I do. Knowing when an appointment is going to happen, knowing what emails to respond to first. Those are a daily struggle. Yet he can make an entire documentary uh, that is succinct and flows well and is moving emotionally, he can do that. He can do those higher level thinking skills. But ask him to tell you what your day was yesterday or plan meals for the next day, he struggles. So transition planning must shift from this idea of independence towards interdependence. That's building supportive environments that flex around the individual, not just the system. So why is interdependence critical? Well, research, including my own upcoming publication in a chapter book by Rutledge, shows neurodivergent students are twice as likely to not finish college, not because of cognitive ability, but because of poor institutional supports. Employment outcomes reflect similar disparities. For example, autistic adults with degrees remain underemployed or unemployed at really alarming rates. Some studies put that at 60 to 80%. I've seen some statistics at 90% are underemployed or unemployed. We have worked with many individuals who get a job and within a couple of weeks to months, they're let go. And it's all of the challenges that Carter, myself, and many of you probably know that these skills are needed in the workplace. And if there's not support there, employment is not going to be successful. Some experience higher rates of justice system involvement due to communication misunderstandings. For example, people on the spectrum are not more likely to commit a crime. In fact, they're less likely. However, they're more likely to be involved with the justice system because they don't know their rights. They don't know that they don't have to speak. And oftentimes they'll say the wrong thing or their perception is skewed that it leads the investigator to think that they committed the crime or that they are an accomplice to it. So our systems are all set up for independence, for being able to do things without support, and there are real consequences to that. Interdependence models, where the student leads but is scaffolded by responsive support, can counter these systemic gaps and improve those long-term outcomes. One thing that I often like to say to my graduate students when they come to me is that we have all grown up, for the most part, in a individualistic uh, culture. And it has many of its points of advantage and success. However, more than 80% of the world's population is under what we call a collectivist culture, where not only the individual is important, but the community around them, their family, the community members, their teachers, their stakeholders. Decisions are made with everyone's input, not just the individual. It doesn't mean the individual goes away. It means that the individual is one part of that decision wheel. I'm not saying that the United States or all of us should turn collectivist, but if you look at the service, the special education or disability services in other Western, Eastern, African, Asian cultures, it is much more responsive and is much more of a collectivist or collaborative mode. So what I would say to this in our transition that we need to do as a country is that we need to start thinking that no one person is on an island. We are all part of a connected fabric in our society, and we must be available to help. And the society, our community, must be available to help us when it's needed. So interdependence is definitely based on the idea of collectivism. Evidence consistently highlights four practices: coordinated transition planning beginning in middle school, strengths-based instruction using universal design for learning, integrated wraparound supports, including mental health and community partnerships, and robust collaboration with external partners like university and employers. This is a picture of my son Carter as a 18-year-old, and that is his focus teacher, his behavioral interventionist, who helped him immensely. When Carter was diagnosed or recognized and eligible for special education services for autism in 8th grade, it helped with the transition into 9th grade. The counselor and the principal came to his IEP meeting in 8th grade. They had an early time away from everyone else that he could come in and get his schedule, walk around, meet the teachers if they were available. And he had an excellent case manager. It was different from this interventionist, but that case manager did an excellent job, checked in on him every day, problem solved with him on assignments that he didn't do, negotiated with teachers to bridge that gap of communication between Carter and his teachers. Then in sophomore year, his case manager changed. And that happens often. I'm sure many of you have experienced that as well. However, in the first 9 weeks, we're on quarter system, we thought that everything was running smoothly. We weren't getting grade alerts. We had come off of the wins of last year, so we thought everything was in good shape. Until grading period ended and Carter had a mental health emergency. And after we uncovered everything that was happening, he was failing all of his classes. He hadn't turned in hardly any work, albeit he would take the test and make an A. And the the case manager who had been telling us that she was visiting with him had not. So the community in the school pulled together. We had outside visitors, practitioners come in. They had people from their district level and their school level, and it wasn't adversarial. We said, hey, here's a problem. And the school agreed, and they collaborated, bringing him into the behavioral intervention program. And this teacher is a miracle worker because not only did they make sure that he was getting the attention and the check-ins that were needed, but also taught him the skills that he needed to be more on his own, doing what's needed to be done, incentivizing, reasoning, motivating, all those things. And it took 2.5 years, but by the time he was a senior in May, he graduated, and there wasn't a lot of doubt. It was kind of smooth sailing, and we really appreciated that help from our community, the school, and from his teachers. We definitely gave the interventionist a nice gift card at the end, but that collaboration, especially for myself as I was getting my doctorate at the time, it helped me understand the value and the power of community. What I did was I created what's called the Community Model of Inclusion and Interdependence. And that is the chapter that'll be coming out in July, what that's all about. It is a framework for advocating for the needs of the neurodiverse and really for anyone. It lands on coordinating, making sure that you're not just inviting somebody, but that you're collaborating with people in the community, practitioners, business owners, um, vocational trainers, teachers, university representatives, all of those partners and stakeholders in this individual's success should be part of that process of special education or education in general. Universal Design for Learning, UDL, is really about providing everyone with the needs of the neurodiverse because it benefits everybody. A good example would be if you need a simple four function calculator for an assessment. Well, for a high schooler, maybe that isn't such a bad thing for everyone. And that's what UDL does. It designs it so that students have the freedom and the autonomy to choose what they want in terms of supports. And then finally, the wraparound part of it is incredibly important. We don't do a great job in the United States because the services are so separate and siloed. But if you look at a country like England, which I will share with Jamie to allow it available, but that's part of one of my studies is looking at international school systems. And there's two distinct differences between the United States and countries like England, Germany, Australia, India, Japan. They all do it this way. A parent feels like their child is falling behind. They don't go to the school. They go to their community services and supports where they will evaluate, identify if there are any diversity in processing thought, a disability, what have you. And then they will write a prescription to the school that the school then follows. There's no, you know, everything's, all the eggs are in the basket of the school and they hold the purse strings and the gate in order to get support. In those other countries, it's somebody else, professionals who provide that here's the profile and here's what this individual needs. That's an important distinction. And I think that as we talk throughout this lecture, I think we have to think about that. How is our system working and how is it serving our neurodiverse? Okay, but let's make it practical. We can talk about theories and frameworks all we want and how we compare to the rest of the world, but you're a family. You need help now to make sure that transition, that cliff doesn't happen when they go on to school or post-secondary school or career. So families play an important role. They play the most important role, uh, aside from the individual themselves in that transition. As caregivers, many have spent years advocating, interpreting systems, and protecting their child. This can sometimes unintentionally limit autonomy. Oftentimes, I will see a parent sort of kind of in a routine as the child gets older, letting them wander a little bit farther without their protection, letting them do things on their own and figuring out problem solving. But something happens in that transition from eighth grade to ninth grade, where as my experience and the research shows, many parents fall back to a a parenting style when their child was a toddler. And it very much looks like micromanaging. It looks like uh, one person or the parents are making all the decision and the child is supposed to just follow. It happens. I don't think families are doing that on purpose. I don't think well, as the research shows, they're not, their perception is they're helping, and we have to ramp it up because typically an eighth grader who's neurodiverse will struggle in ninth grade, and parents may panic and try to help them. But what it does is it kicks the can down the road, and then they find out that they don't know how to study. They don't know how to cook their own meals. They don't know how to uh, dress appropriately for class. They find that out in college, away from their eyes, and the results can be devastating. It could be dropping out of college, it could be very low grades. It could be getting fired from jobs after a couple of weeks. It's important that families are part of the solution and that they understand what they're doing uh, isn't always helping them. In other words, you're the pilot, your child's the co-pilot. When they hit a certain age, you need to switch that role. They need to be the pilot, and you need to be the co-pilot, and then eventually the navigator, and then finally a passenger. If that transition that we seem to do very naturally with neurotypical children, if that isn't followed for neurodivergent, they will become more dependent on others for their needs, less motivated, and not able to uh, fully realize not just their potential, but their own goals, their own wants and needs. The other thing that I would say is it's very important for parents to listen. Families need to listen. And I'm not talking about just talking, but also behavior. Behavioral hesitations are actually meaningful communication. For example, fear of driving. I have had encounters with many parents, including myself, where there's frustration that we're having to still drive them around when they're 16, 17, or 18 because they won't go to driver's school. It's not defiance, it's communicating and communicating that I'm not ready. So, really listening to that is important. The other thing I wanted to say is using practical strategies like giving youth kind of a roommate style responsibilities, encouraging them to speak in meetings like IEP meetings or emailing their teachers and reading email. None of them do that. It seems to be generational, but email is how the world communicates with each other, and a lot of neurodiverse individuals don't know how to use that tool. It's a nuisance to them. And allowing safe to fail experiences while the services are still free and the consequences aren't as dire or expensive. I often tell parents, would you rather them learn it now or at $1,700 a credit hour? That's what you're looking at. So start early as possible with their developmental trajectory and help them gain skill and execution as you go along, and you rolling back your need to prompt, check, etc. Here's a timeline for what I would say the research says is best for transition. You need to you need to transition from pilot to co-pilot, asking them to answer questions from teachers or the IEP meeting or doctors. Do that by eighth grade. Picking your battles. Is it really that important that they drive at 16? If not, if it's not life or death that they are able to drive, then maybe waiting is okay. Carter didn't drive until I believe he was 17. My eldest daughter didn't drive until she was 19. They all told us we're not ready. Be the roommate, begin that in ninth grade, allow for failure and natural consequence while it's cheap in ninth grade, be the resource throughout their lifetime, and help them land softly. What we tell our children, I personally would like them to live with us for the rest of my life. But what we do tell parents is that, or sorry, what we do tell our children is that you can live rent free or low rent free or low rent, sorry. You can do that for as long as you want, as long as you're going to school, taking care of your mental health, or working full time, or a combination of those. If they're not, then we will help them set up their next stage in life. They're not going to stay in our house forever without building skill and progressing. And that's how our family does it, but that's also how the research shows how transitioning children who are neurodiverse out of the nest and being able to do things more on their own. One thing, or a few things that I want to caution families. The first is quick fixes. I ran into a family that had paid $15,000 for some kind of intervention that wasn't research based, had to pay out of pocket because insurance wouldn't cover it. There's a lot of people out there that claim certain things work. And I implore you to do your research. Use AI, ask for those links, click on the links, see if it's from a peer-reviewed journal. Oftentimes it's not. Be wary of societal norms or developmental norms. If your child's not reading at age 5, is that necessarily a developmental thing? Or is it just that we have, as a society, said that we need our children, all first graders, to read at this level, or all third graders have to write at this level? Those aren't based on biological, we're not born to write. We're not born to, uh, um, brush our teeth or tie our shoes or ride a bike, drive a car. None of those are innate abilities that biologically we develop in like walking or talking or eating. Uh, it is societal. And what I would say is to be cautious of holding your child to a bar that may not and likely will be uh, inappropriate for them, and listen to that communication that your child might be giving. And then finally, I would say on this one for families, be careful of my way or the highway. I know you're smart. I know that you have a lifetime full of experience, but the greatest lesson that I learned as a parent is backing off and saying, okay, it looks like you have to learn this lesson. I'm going to keep you safe. I don't want you to get hurt or get in trouble, but I'm going to let you explore and see that, oh, the way that we've been telling you might be the better way. And for neurodivergent individuals, that's the best way to motivate somebody in order to gain those skills. For example, uh, my wife told me that Carter is thinking about moving out with this partner and getting an apartment with some other friends. He has a job that pays about $200 every other week after he realized that it would be very costly and he didn't have the money to be able to do that, he started looking for full-time work. He started planning on when to register for class because he knows that he can't advance without some education. We didn't tell him to do that. We didn't say it's time for you to leave. We didn't prompt his partner to say, hey, why don't you guys live together? He was motivated by that because he saw a need, and that's incredibly important. And that is a huge part of the success of transition. There are four pillars of effective systems. Effective systems rest on four interconnected pillars. Building a culture of community inclusion from the top, fostering inclusive leadership, not just say inclusivity, but walk the walk, delivering high quality curriculum and training. Oftentimes, you're partnered with universities or educational service centers, and integrating transition services with strong coordination that bringing in county services or bringing in the advisor for the university, those shouldn't be afterthoughts. They should be part of that process from the beginning. These pillars align with international inclusive models and the research synthesized in my work. Transition cannot rely on individual teacher heroics. It must be embedded structurally. And that's what I found in the community model of inclusion and interdependence. All those countries or continents or cultures that I mentioned before, they found a need in order to meet the needs of neurodiverse individuals. They did their research, they partnered with universities, they created a council of community members who made decisions not only about how to build the school, but how it would be run, who would be hired. All of that showed a very successful school where the community's perception about disability changed positively. Not only the individuals with special needs achieved more than they had before, but they uh, also helped the general population increase their achievement as well. And social emotional, they less depression, less mental health issues, and so forth. The only country that this has not been successful in is the United States. So I would implore anyone who's a leader that might be listening or looking at this, please make some changes so that we are doing a little bit more of this inclusivity and using this model. And so I have some recommendations. Each stakeholder plays a distinct role. Policymakers can fund transition coordinators and mandate interagency agreements. Administrators can redesign schedules for co-teaching and create community inclusion councils. Teachers can embed executive functioning routines and model self-advocacy daily. And families can co-design interdependence routines and invite partners early. And finally, students can build strengths, one-pagers, or explore future pathways through micro internships or job shadowing. Everyone has a role, not just the school, not just the parents, not just the individual, not just the government. Interdependence only works when each role is very active. So I would say here are a few things that I would say are the biggest needs. For policy, we need to extend and fund special education with respect to transition planning and services into undergraduate or career, at least having 11th to 14th grade have a system in place to support as you transition. Administrators can create a committee on transition planning, begin with SPED, then include 504, and ultimately all of the students. Teachers can model to-do lists, note-taking, and perseverance. And they can model respecting the needs and the communication of the individual. If the student is saying, I don't I don't like doing Cornell notes, then maybe there's another note system that'll work. And then families and the student, what you can do is change your role from an agent or a target of accountability to a resource for both of each other. So it this might all sound good, and does it really make sense to have it happen? Can it really happen? Well, it is. At Kennesaw State University, through my research program, we have a research study. We have established a peer mentoring program that replicates case management in special education for our neurodiverse, autistic, ADHD, executive functioning challenges uh, for our undergraduate and graduate students. What happens is we train the peer mentors in ABA and to be a behavior technician, and then they use structured scaffolding, relational, and the mentors support those communication, socialization, and emotional regulation skills, very important to navigating adulthood. So far, we have 16 participants, which is about to go up to over 30 in this semester. We hope to get to 100 over 3 years. And I'll talk about these results in just a second. But one of the things that I'm very proud of is every single participant since spring of last year has asked to continue. We ask every semester if you want to continue or not, which is perfectly fine. But they've all asked to continue. So I now have 5 researchers working on this because we have such a great need. The need's there. The results are clear. This is one of our participants in this graph. The data points are all of the average of all of the person's goals and how successful they are in the skill and execution of it. And the blue line there shows the trend, which is positive. What's also really impressive, if you look at the big gap on the right, that's winter break. From before winter break and after, they still maintain that skill. They were still doing that level of socialization or organization, whatever it may have been. This really, the student liaisons for autism project reflects that interdependence-based design. If we look at our findings, what we're seeing is that the preliminary data shows positive gains in communication, socialization, and executive functioning skills. These are the results of the changes in skills from one semester to the other for a random sample of 4 of our participants. If you know the social responsiveness scale, SRS-2, if you know it at all, you know that the higher the score, the more the need for support. So the lower the score, the more independent or interdependent they are in those skills, which that's what it's showing, sometimes in very large uh, jumps. But everybody is gaining those skills in the different areas, with a few exceptions. So we're very proud of that. What we're even more proud of is the fact that mentors that help with coursework, organization, conflict resolution, and campus engagement, it costs us $250 per student per semester. That's pretty cheap. And that model is very cost effective and scalable. What's even more interesting is that if a college or a university hires a BCBA or a counselor or what have you, that this model can be used through insurance, which would strengthen the sustainability at the institution. So it also demonstrates, and the study demonstrates, that universities can operationalize that interdependence. So what I would like to say in closing, as we conclude, remember interdependence is the path. Neurodivergent young adults thrive when supported by communities that move at their own pace, honor their communication, and respect their developmental timelines. Families, educators, administrators, and policymakers all share responsibility for building these systems. So let's keep the conversation going and work collectively towards equitable, inclusive transition outcomes. These are my references, and then this is my contact information. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for all of that incredible information. You know, that transition out of high school into college or into adult life in general is so difficult, or can be so difficult, and really very scary for every young adult that is transitioning into the great big world. And so we really appreciate your insight and your input, and any tips that, you know, families can take away to make that transition easier for them. So we did just have one question. Can you please show the reference slide again? Michael, if you could go back to that. And if it would be helpful for everyone logged on, Michael, can we capture that slide and include that in the follow-up email? That would be great. That would be great. You're muted. Michael, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Perfect. I didn't see any questions in the chat, so we're going to stick around for another couple of minutes. So if you do have questions for Michael or about, you know, college living experience in particular, please throw those into the chat, and we will capture those. We've got a couple of minutes before we wrap things up. Again, I want to try to be respectful of everyone's evening, and we'll close down at 7. But we will capture that slide and attach that to the follow-up email. And you know, if you digest all of the information that that Michael has shared with us, and then you think of questions here in the next day or two, feel free to email me directly, and you can just hit reply to that follow-up email, and I will then forward that question on to Michael. You'll also get Michael's contact information in that email as well. So feel free. But I don't see any questions coming into the Q&A. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Well, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. And to everyone who logged in, thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. And as a quick reminder, we are recording this event, and so I will be sending that link to everyone who's registered here in the next few days. We will also post this webinar on our events page of the CLE website. So please, again, feel free to share that with other parents or other professionals in your network who may find this conversation really beneficial. And if you'd like to learn more about college living experience or connect with one of our team members directly, we would love to hear from you. And you can reply to that follow-up email again, or visit our website directly at experiencecle.com. And remember to follow us on those socials so that you can stay up to date with more webinars, more virtual events, and things that are happening at one of our 8 centers or 8 locations around the country. So stay tuned. And once again, Michael, thank you so much. And to all of you who logged in, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you all next time. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.